My name is Ruth Copeland. I am an early childhood education graduate student from East Tennessee State University, and I want to tell you about correlational research design. Correlational research design is a type of quantitative research. It is a non experimental study that seeks to explain relationships among variables. The relationships assess independent variables without manipulating them and without randomly assigning participants to different conditions. The researcher's primary interest is to determine non causal relationships. There are many topics to compare in a correlational design study. I have listed a few from the text and some others that came to mind during this project. During a literature review for another project, I found a survey by Doris Spurgeon, Psychological Approaches to the Study of Play. This survey references several studies that incorporate correlational design. In my research, I am currently investigating the attitudes and practices of preschool teachers concerning using play as a learning tool. For this study, I have developed a survey for both teachers and paraprofessionals to complete. The goal is to compare the teacher's attitude versus practice. I also want input from the paraprofessional's point of view to see if the teacher's attitudes about play as a learning tool is demonstrated in the classroom on a consistent basis. Correlational design is most often used to predict scores, explain relationships, and to measure the degree of association. It looks to identify tendencies or patterns for two or more variables or sets of data. Correlation design, as it is known today, was first presented in 1895 by Carl Pearson in a paper before the Royal Society of England. His research was based on Darwin's theory of evolution and Sir Francis Galton's ideas of heredity and natural inheritance. There are two types of correlational design: the explanatory design, which is also known as relational research. It is used to explain associations between variables, and the prediction design that researchers use to forecast future performances and to predict outcomes. Three specific characteristics of correlational design include displays of scores, associations between scores, and multiple variable analysis. The most common way to display scores are scatter plots, also known as scatter diagrams. The investigator plots points on a graph for each participant using X and Y. A single point indicates where they meet for each individual. When using multiple variables, researchers often use a correlation matrix. A correlation matrix allows the researcher to assign numbers to the variables to simplify the table. After graphing scores, the researcher can interpret the meaning of the relationships. The researcher must develop an understanding of the direction, form, and the strength of the relationships. In many correlational studies, multiple variables are used to predict outcomes. Researchers must consider both independent and dependent variables when considering the outcomes of the study. A regression line is the line that comes closest to all of the points on the plot. A regression table shows the overall amount of variance explained in an independent variable by all of the dependent variables. The most common ethical issue is inappropriately reporting results due to a lack of understanding between causation and association. Step one in conducting a correlation research study is identifying a problem that requires understanding the direction and degree of association between two or more data sets. Once a research question has been developed, the researcher must identify the subjects and seek permission to conduct the study. In step three, the researcher needs to identify at least two characteristics and determine the instruments that will be used. Typically, one instrument is used for each variable, but one instrument can be used. In step four, the selected instruments that are reliable and valid are used to collect at least two sets of data. Next, the data is analyzed. The researcher looks for a pattern of responses and uses statistical procedures to determine the strength and direction of the relationship. The final step requires the researcher to interpret the results. The researcher must consider the impact of intervening variables, interpret the regression weights, and develop a prediction, ensuring that the data supports the research questions. The researcher must evaluate the study for strength of data collected, clear analysis, and interpretation. Important factors to consider include sample size, good presentation of graphs and charts, clear procedures, and interpretation.